not starting.
Yeah, we'll maybe give them a few minutes.
Not gonna wait.
Yeah.
We got a bunch of people. This is.
All right, I'm gonna start the recording.
Let's go right to our discussion of 2024 budget priorities. So I know we had talked about waiting till after the elections, but I think the feeling was maybe we'll get it started a little bit. You know, will help us as we go down the road here. Because I thought last time it was pretty good, but last time was real late. Didn't we do it in March? March, yeah. January, yeah, it was too late. So it's good to talk a little bit. You know, going formal, it was great last time. So anyway, that's what we're here for. But I'm gonna let Sal, the Board of Finance, kick it off, and we'll just, you know, everyone will have a chance from all of the words to speak.
Yes, thanks everyone for coming. I think the primary reason is similar to what we did last time, that we just kind of short the budget cycle. And really speak about priorities. Also provide some guidance. And then also talk to understand what the challenges are. So to start off with, just to talk a little about the last year's budget cycle. To look at last budget cycle we just completed in June, we had a close to $4 million surplus. Clearly, I want the priority to look at the surplus areas, the budget areas, to really understand are those real surplus, or I don't want to carry that kind of surplus in the subsequent budget process, because really, I like to have a little tighter budget. There's always going to be some reserve, but the surplus is too great as far as to carry forward. We have to tax our citizens to have that kind of surplus. It's really good. So there was about $4 million surplus.
Can I ask a question real quick? I don't know if you have this number. Do you have the number of percentage of surplus for the town and percentage of surplus for the
Yeah,
board based on the full budget?
Yeah, for the town, it was about 3.2 million. If you look at the Board of Education, you guys don't call it surplus. I mean, you used about $500,000 of your expenditure budget for FY for future year budget requirements. And you also had $500,000 left over choice for it. I call it surplus because I see it's balance of dollars left over. I know you may see it a little differently. So I'm saying about $3 million on the town side and about $1 million.
And do you have the percentage of what that surplus is to the budget?
I mean, if you talk about $85 million in total, it's 5%. A little higher on the town side, small 2%.
2%. What's
You're gonna
that
count,
outside?
you're gonna count the choice budget with it. You gotta see roughly $50 million, so it's $500,000. It's just $500,000, 1%.
I mean, the key for me is really that we've had this kind of surplus probably 2 or 3 years, mostly on the town side. So I don't want to be a little tired. Process. Yeah, you're gonna have a little bit, be a little tired. Another area, I don't know whether the Board of Education or the town uses zero-based budgeting. What I mean by that is, don't just say I want a 3% increase in last year's budget. Zero-based budget really means start from ground zero, say I have zero for that particular item, justify the dollars associated with that. Now, you may not be able to do it for everything. Things like discretionary items like supplies, you can build up the ground. On the labor side, you know you have a certain workforce, so you really may not be able to do zero-based budget. But in some cases, we've had open positions on the town side probably the last 2 or 3 years. I question whether that position is needed. So I would have to tell the town to look at it and say that because part of the surplus on the town side has been these open positions. So, the other thing is, you know, I'm used to a budget approach where you challenge the manager. Don't say, tell me what you need without some kind of challenge. Know that I have a meeting with June manager, I recommend say maybe overall a 2% target increase, for this upcoming budget. That's a challenge. But I've also challenged my folks before budget process, and somehow they found a way to meet that 2% challenge. You may not be able to meet it, might not challenge your manager to be more aggressive with respect to the budget. On the capital plan, will be a couple of big items. One is the police station upgrades for this cycle. That's about a $500,000 amount. Another big item we talked about is replacing both eventually town hall also. So those are a couple of major capital projects. The surplus that we had remaining from the prior year, we actually used about $2.2 million of surplus to accommodate some capital requests that were not included in that budget. So we did require upgrades for the school, these vehicles. So everybody should be aware of the $2.2 million. And what I have a list I could provide, but I'm sure Tom, I can provide that list. But it's basically 2.2 million of surplus that we use for capital requests that we probably acquired last year's budget. So one of the other items is that in the last 3 years, we said we weren't going to have any new bonding, only debt, because we started at very high debt. We used $108 million. That debt was just too high. For a town our size, it should be around 40 million. We managed to reduce that debt for this fiscal year ending $73 million, which is great. But that's kind of inhibited us for being a little more aggressive on capital items and so forth. So this year we may have to do some of that, some of the capital items, not have a choice. Done a good job dropping that debt. We may have to do some debt. So I think Board of Finance will consider. I mean, we've got a certain level. I don't want to decrease. So, I mean, it's too much when we consider. The other complicating factor is that we're in a reval situation this year, so we're going to have to look at what that revaluation means. Town manager, I'd like to know as soon as possible what that revaluation means. It's important for our budget processes. So these are, some of the items that I'm thinking about. Clearly, if there's any questions, free to ask. My finance any input. That's what I've been. Yeah, the question of summarize it. So with that, I'd like to maybe. I'm sorry.
Mr. Grady.
Oh, Mr. Gray, any comments from you?
I can't hear anything. This is the worst technology I think I've ever seen. It's just a garbled up mess.
Is that a budget requirement?
Yeah.
For that, so. That's the-
You, I was close to them.
I got them.
We can hear you.
We can hear
We can
you.
hear you.
Do you want to say anything? The priorities from the Board of Finance? Mr.
A
Grady.
tin can and a string would be better.
So,
We'll get it. If you get it back, Kate, we'll do it.
Yeah, we're in this. Mike's- That's why I don't want to.
Tim, you hear us now?
I can just barely make you out when you're yelling.
Tim Grady, how does this sound?
There's no sound. Don't hold the meeting up for me. I'm not gonna spend my night doing this. This is terrible.
Hang on a minute, Tim. Hang on.
Say what you really.
Yeah.
Tim, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I can hear you now, yes.
Yes, so move, if you could move your laptop closer into the center, I think it's getting blocked, because I think it's picking up on the mic on your laptop. Just move it. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right.
Hold on, Tim. I'm gonna relocate the laptop and see
You're
what.
plugged in though.
Do you have power or not? All right, Rose, somebody from the back could just.
Tim, can you hear us now?
Tim.
Tim,
That's
how does
good.
this?
Okay.
Much better.
All right.
All right.
Just to follow up, did you have any comments before we go to the Board of Education?
No, I'm good.
All right. So,
Okay.
we'll leave it up to you to start.
Yeah, I'll start. Board Chair. So I think first off, I think it's great that we're meeting at this point. I think after the election, I think it would be, or shortly after, within a few weeks, getting another date on the calendar. I know for some it's hard. And I thank everyone for taking the time with really like weeks notice. But I think if we have something on the calendar and scheduled, then at least we'll know what's coming. So that, the other thing is with contractual obligations alone, and inflation, like considering everything that has been impacted by inflation, we understand people within the town, people are hurting, but students are too, and they are our future generation, and they've been impacted most. Learning loss is quite significant. We're not looking to add new positions. We're not looking to add any state-of-the-art tech equipment or technology at this point. We're just trying to maintain status quo to continue delivering the services so they can continue to recover from the time that they lost. There are significant behavioral challenges across the state and other things now that everything's back full time and moving back to normal, thank God. So at this point, with contractual obligations, everything closest to whole as possible. As for funding running out, we're gonna say without knowing where inflation is gonna be in a year from now, that 3% is what we're gonna come in at. And I can't speak for the future board in the next, 6 to 12 weeks as we go through this process. That's really gonna be for the board to decide, and the board as a whole, right now, I only have 4 out of 9 of us. So it's hard to speak for what's gonna happen with board turnover, where our board is gonna be, what the board thinks are the needs based on our surplus. So if I were to guess, if I were to just throw something out there, I would say 3%. After our last meeting, I did go back through the budget presentation. And I do believe that we are presenting with a zero budget-based approach. Zero-based budgeting is if I have $1,000 and I'm gonna put $250 towards food and $250 towards fuel and $500 towards rent. That's my $1,000. I'm allocating every single penny of my budget. I might end up with a surplus, and ideally you want a surplus, not a deficit in zero-based budgeting. So we do present that way, and I think good money management skills are ending up with a surplus. Ideally, we don't want a surplus that impacts our taxpayers, but it's much better than having a deficit. In terms of the choice money, that is our only contingency fund. And then again, if, as a board of ed, we are not agents of the town, but creatures of the state outlined in chapter 170 of the statute. It's important for us to come up with what we come up with, what we think is most appropriate, and then Board of Finance can either accept it or not accept it. Town council can either accept it or not accept it. And then we can bring it to a vote and see what our community wants. I think as elected officials, that's the best way we can serve the education within the town. I don't want my taxes going up. I don't want to pay more money. I don't think we need additional things, and we're not looking at all these bells and whistles, but we are trying to continue to maintain, be an excellent town and have a competitive real estate market. And really just be attractive in all we have to offer as a town. And that can be from trash pickup to snow removal to education and everything we offer. So that's where we are, but I think contractual obligations is our biggest component at this point. And I know it probably is on the town side as well. So.
I mean, I can just say for this being the first year, obviously there was a lot of learning.
Right,
And
it is a lot.
a lot, but still much more to learn as well. And there was a great job of answering questions. A lot of my questions had to do with kind of more so the lingo to even understand, where the money is like coming from. I mean, I would have to say the one thing that did surprise me is the budget number that went in for the Board of Ed and how it was cut by the town. And everything was fine.
So we
So I
did cut
know,
an assistant superintendent. Like, we did cut a number of positions to get it to that. Everything is fine, but I think as people not working in the buildings,
yeah, but like I was just saying, it's just, so certain information was provided, say, if we didn't get 3%, that X amount of teachers were going to be cut. That didn't happen when the budget was cut. So I'm still just kind of confused in understanding, obviously, there's so many different components to it. And obviously things fluctuate, like you said, we had staff, we got rid of staff, and so on. So like I said, I'm still trying to learn, still trying to understand, but that would be my one thing that I did see that I'm still trying to wrap my head around, the 5%, which got cut. And, we were still able to have what we could have to provide the kids. And obviously there's money that has been coming in the state that has helped, offset that, especially a lot of the summer programs, which are amazing. And these kids need that extra help and that extra support. So it is going to be interesting going into the next year without having those funds, how it's going to be rearranged or what, it's going to be definitely, I think it's going to be tough.
well, there's gonna be that funding plan that we tried to be intentional about not putting salaries on that. Other districts have, but Brian, speak to some of the other cuts that were made.
Sure.
I think you do bring a valid point, but.
I think we look at the budget proposal. That budget is derived from what we believe we need to move forward. Then when we don't get that number, the last thing we want to do is cut physical programs and staff. Then we go back and say, let's do without this equipment, but even if we need this technology, let's cut back on this, let's cut back on supplies. So the school supply budgets have been held constant. Same budget, supplies for 3 years now. That's not what they came in with, but when we didn't get the funding, then we hold the supply budget and say, let's squeeze it down. So you may say, okay, it's okay to do that because things are still running and so on. The whole point is to do whatever we get for a number is to make the best of it. So it has the least impact on the students and their learning and the opportunities we provide for them. So that's a question of why, we don't cut staff. If we don't have, if we can put them into grants, so be it. So for instance, the choice plan that's always spoken about, which I understand. This year, right now, we anticipated having 4.5% students be choice, which qualifies us to get a reimbursement at $8,000. We talked about that at the time. Right now, we're not, October 1 number, it's not like we're going to hit the 4%. We're like at 3.8. That means we get $2,000 less per choice student reimbursement, roughly $215,000 less for this current budget that we have had teachers in that choice line to be used. So the choice monies that we receive are not always constant. We're feeling that right now. we were fortunate to have 4% over a number of years. And we could bank on having X amount coming in, but this year, it doesn't look like we're gonna hit that number. Not that we haven't tried, it's just students are enrolling, students are leaving Hartford. It's not just Berlin, it's across the state. That's one thing. But you talk about, I want to talk about two for staff, coming in at 2, which we want to. Our contractual obligations, most of the contracts are between 2 and 3%. That's their salaries. So to come in at 2, it's really a reduction to find the difference between 3 and 2, or whatever that is. Even if we came in, some of the salary increases are at 3%. So to come in at 2, you have to find that 1% somewhere, which is, and looking at the insurance that's on top of that, there's insurance increases. Everything we're hearing from our brokers, that there could be even greater increases in insurance, may not hold the 10% cap that we usually have. So that could be an increase. And on top of that, I think we're all suffering from the thing of that there is inflation now. So any supplies that we buy, just like anything we're buying personally at the grocery store, at the store, is now increased too. So to come in at a 2, in my opinion, will be reductions somewhere in the budget. Even to say a 3, which we came in this year was close to 3, we still made reductions. It may not have been staffing reductions, but there were reductions within things that we had anticipated. And I would gather that to get to that, when we were in the budget, our contractual obligations were more than what we had. So we had to find somewhere in the budget to take up the difference, if that makes sense. So I understand completely about getting the lowest number that we can possibly get, but I also know that there's a level of commitment to be a competitive school district where families want to move to town and are able to provide an education that's at or above surrounding towns and so on. So, whatever the Board of Finance decides is that number, we're going to do the best we can, but I think we have to take into account some of those pieces that we're dealing with. I understand, as Julia said, it is a tough time for many people, as it has been for a number of people. But I also think we're dealing with, even though some people, as I heard someone say, walking in about, really inflation's not taking place. If you believe inflation is not taking place, I know when I go to the grocery store, it is different than what I paid a year ago. I think we all feel that.
So the president said there was no.
I heard you say that, Mark. I heard you
You
say
must know
that.
what's going on.
So I just think it's important that those factors, and the last thing we want to do is cut staff or program. Because that's what the community feels. That changes the whole landscape of what students have opportunities for. That's not what we want to do, and that has the greatest impact.
I understand.
Okay.
You understand that. I also look at it from the numbers. You had $1 million of carryover. You had $500,000 of expenses that you spend and use for FY23. $500,000 for your choice program. That's 2%. So I'm saying, I'm challenging to say, if you got 2% in kind of reserve, I'm saying 2% for an increase. That's the way I'm looking at it. Okay, I'm not, but what you can do, you figure out what we can do. But I'm just saying it. When I see the numbers, okay, just strictly for the numbers, I see balance of expenses left over, or budget left over. So that's the way I'm looking at it, and that's what. And believe me, Board of Finance didn't tell me we didn't agree on a 2% number. I just threw it out there as a 2%. But I also look at what I see in terms of surplus and those kind of things and say, it could be achievable if you have those consistent type of surpluses. That's all I'm trying to portray to you guys. So,
I think. I hear what you're saying. I think that, again, going back to the point of, once we as a new board, again, Melissa, I know you're out on ballot this year, so if you get reelected, you're back at the table, like, you're gonna be able to bring all your experience from this past year and going through everything and really, having additional questions, and Tracy can be on the board, Tina can be on the board, I can be on the board, we're gonna have some continuity, and then we're gonna have some new members. And I think as a board, it's our role as a new board to establish what that is gonna look like based on our evaluation of what the needs are. And I think everyone is a contributor in that process. And that's why when we were talking about having these meetings, I said, I think we should all be coming together and having these as a collective. But again, if the board determines that 3% is what we collectively think is best, or even 5, or say 10, I'm just kidding, or 2, I think then we've done our work and then the other, the council and the board of finance and then the voters can decide. And I think that's the beauty of the process is allowing you guys to then go through it and ask questions and have, and then allowing the council to go through and then allowing the voters to see what matters to them.
So the question I have is, when I thought about challenging the managers from a budget perspective, the way the process I see it from the Board of Education, you get a budget from the managers, right? It could be around 8%, 9%, right? Or, it could be much higher than what you come up with. Why do you have your managers come up with such a high budget and you drop it to around 3-4%?
Because we challenge them.
Yeah, but why don't you challenge them in the beginning of the process as opposed to them coming through with an 8% budget?
Because I want to hear what their needs are.
Well,
I want to hear what their needs are.
But
No,
we
there's
just-
cut. But let me finish for 1 second. I want to hear what their needs are, but also that they come in knowing we're not hiring a new staff. So there's no new staff in that number. So they know that based on the budgets, that even getting the 3% last year, they know that there's not new staff. Like the new staff, the one that was in the budget year before was a career person at the high school. So they know that there's no new staff. So they are challenged. Their supply budgets have been held at zero. We do go back and say, and there has been positions not filled. I know that, Melissa said that positions weren't cut. There were positions not filled at the high school last year to make that budget work. They were retirements. They weren't, we try our best, but they weren't filled.
Yeah.
So there were positions cut. We try not to have, in this job market in education, I was just at Southern this morning. Teachers are becoming a shortage, whether you believe it or not. There's districts that are 120 teachers short starting the district. Most of them are urban. Luckily, Berlin has a great reputation, or some of you may believe it or not. We're pulling teachers from other communities, leaving to come here of our own position. We don't have any open certified positions. That's not the case in a lot of districts across the state. So the question to you as a community, do you want people to come to Berlin to either, so we're not in a shortage for next year's coming? Because just being at Southern this morning and they had all the numbers for across the state, there's not enough teachers currently in the certain credential programs to fill the open position that exists today, never mind next year. So that's also coming up to say, so I know this discussion's been before, so why don't, now Tracy, you're on the committee to negotiate, right? At first it was, we're gonna put the contract at X for teachers, and you could try to get it X, but then it goes to arbitration and so on. And so where we're at is middle of the road competitive other district. But the reality is, don't we want to be there so we attract good teachers for the district? Because they're going to have the greatest impact on students. So, I just encourage you, and I know Sal, we've had a good relationship going through Mark. I trust Ashley with the numbers. Julia said to you, look at the numbers. If there's a suggestion by you to say, hey, I know you're talking about zero-based budgeting. I'm saying principals are coming in with what they think, but they're not getting it. They're not getting anything new that they want. And I could say, you said, well, you're releasing 2.2 million for capital surplus. The additional funds that we save at the end of the year, it goes through the Finance and Operations Committee. They look at it, they approve it, and we look and then say, what are things we didn't get before? What are things we want to do in the district? And we use the money for that. And some of those things have been things typically the town would pay for. Paving the playground area, redoing playground, typically come out of town side. So it's not that we just take the money and just, I don't want you to think that. I mean, we're trying to make, this room particular. Some of you may say it shouldn't look nice like this, but it does. I follow Mark on that. Mark redid upstairs, so I'll blame it on Mark. But it is a nice meeting room. It's where the public comes to. It has a good feel to it. Now, some people might say it shouldn't have been done, but I think at times it is important that you put out a good image. So that's just.
I would
I'm
argue
just-
that he does challenge the principals, like their job is to prepare their budget. And then he takes that, he shows the board of ed what they're coming in with, and then he narrows it down to what he's coming in with. And the whole process is transparent, so to Melissa's point, coming in and say that 5%. And then we narrow it down to the process, we get it more narrow. A lot happens on Brian's end early in the budget season. Then what we send to you is different than initially came in. But again, I think that's part of the process, and I think that's giving it, giving it the time and information it deserves to be public facing throughout the whole process. Like, we don't want to just come in at our 3%, send it off to you without having a record and information showing what that trajectory and process looked like and how we got there. And I think that's a component of transparency And then, you know, once it gets to you guys, whether you reduce it a little bit, keep it there, reduce a lot, wherever it goes from there, you guys have been great to us. And it is very much appreciated. But I feel like with our current contracts, and unless the state goes in a different direction with all bargaining groups, and that's gonna be both town side and board side, salaries are probably gonna continue to increase as inflation continues. I don't foresee salaries freezing at any point, so I think as we think long-term strategic planning, this might be a component, like, again, there's a lot of talk about teachers requiring more pay. And Berlin's not the pioneers in this, I'm talking nationally and then statewide. If you wanna attract people to the profession and keep them in the profession, then they're gonna be needing more pay. And that's a lot of talk happening now. What's gonna happen, I don't know, but I just know that there's a lot of stuff being pushed out right now about teacher salaries and the shortage because of the pay. But
I actually think so. I like the way he does ask the administrators and everything what they want for a budget. But he doesn't go in, I mean, it's like your kid at Christmas time, and you say make a list. My kids are realistic, they know they're not gonna ask for a motorcycle or a real car, because that's just not happening. But they're gonna ask for an Xbox, or they're gonna ask for this, 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 and then we narrow it down and I say, okay, what are your top 3 things you want for Christmas? And that's how I do it in my house. And I think it's kind of the same thing. Now, he says to them, no, don't go crazy. We're not adding an addition to the school or anything like that, but I need you to tell me what it is you really want. And then I think it's good that we see, okay, it's not happening, but these are things they're thinking about. These are things that they want, and the town's able to see, okay, these are things we can think about in the future. Like, okay, we might need this down the road. We might need to look at this down the road. And I think it's a foreshadowing. And then they go in and cut it even more and more and more. But the stuff they ask for is not totally outlandish, because they know better, and they're not gonna do that.
Yeah, I think I'm a proponent of challenging up front, so I hear you. I'm a proponent to say, don't put the Xbox in up front versus having them then put the Xbox and I make the cut. That's all. We have a difference of opinion how to aggressively tell your managers how to budget appropriately. You know, in this time, like you said, you're not gonna hire any more teachers, right? Most likely. But they do come in with actual more staff when they give you the budget. So why give it to them? Why not say up front? Don't include it in your number.
I told them,
your
no,
own staff. I
they
mean,
don't,
that's all.
they would do stuff.
But all I'm just trying to say, I think it's a difference of opinion how we approach the budget process. I would be more aggressive up front. You guys, you guys review it and then become aggressive, cutting things down.
But we also
That's
have,
all.
we also have conversations to say, I'm gonna need X number of teachers out of the high school. So what do we have? Then I let the administrator then decide how that can work within, but getting a college to career readiness person that we hired is something that's needed based on what students need today. So if we don't shift things, that FTE maybe come from a teacher that was hired, it wasn't new, but we shift where it's being in the budget to give students what they need moving forward, right? So there is going to be changes in roles and so on.
another thing we did a few years ago, I don't think it necessarily has to be done annually, because I think by the board going through and doing this, they kind of set the precedent for the high school to do this automatically. We went through and asked for a list of all the classes that had under 15 students and under 10 students. And then from there, we said, okay, X amount of teachers, we do not need those teachers. And we as a board did a really good job at evaluating the needs and assessing what we could do to save money. Since I've been on the board for these 7 years, we've reduced a number of administrators. I remember when I came on, I would hear that we were administrative top heavy. We got rid of all elementary school assistant principals, a middle school assistant principal, an assistant superintendent. When I came in, you could argue that we weren't administrative top heavy compared to other districts. And now we're really, really narrow. So though it hasn't happened overnight or over one budget year, over that, like, when you think that long-term strategic planning, we have been doing our due diligence to make these cuts to continue to maintain. And I think it's important to highlight that, because when Ryan started as superintendent, we didn't have an assistant because we weren't gonna just how it all laid out, and he was doing 2 jobs at once. And things got bad enough, and we didn't want to lose more teachers, so we said, let's lose the assistant superintendent position. Because we want to have the least impact on the kids. When we think about our budget, we think about all of the kids in town and what's gonna have the greatest impact on them. Budget-wise, monetary, and then anything we're cutting, we want to have the least impact on it. We don't want the kids to suffer. So we have been strategic, though it may not be totally public facing, it is there.
Yeah, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with talking about challenging.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's, and understanding, what your needs are too. And part of it is just really to understand the challenges, and second of all, listen to you guys, tell me what your needs are too, and so forth, so. But, are there any questions from anybody?
It's not, I have a question or a comment. I don't want to conclusion because something that the book. We're all personally invested.
You just talk a little louder, sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
it's very simple. We all have personal investment in school. I have my kids, grandkids. I think staff is the first thing we protect at all costs, but there is a cost. So Sal's point is valid, but I think we don't come to moving forward.
Any questions?
Yes, so I'm just, what we're talking about teacher salaries, I'm just curious, so I graduated today from Central, I get my certification, what would I start at in Berlin? Starting.
Bachelor's and master's.
Let's say no masters first,
No masters?
Yeah.
About 50,000,
50,000, masters,
6,
6.
is that probably right around?
Yep, right around.
Yeah, it's
If you come out of the art with a master's degree and all your experience at your current age, they might start you around 65, 70, because they're able to count professional experience because they're going through the state program, which is alternative.
So
Become a teacher in the town,
maybe,
it's $5,000, 10 months.
I don't think I can do it, but, so now I'm here for 20 years in Berlin, as a teacher with a master's, what am I making now?
With a master?
Yeah.
No more, no 6 years though, right?
But what's the 6 years, what?
6 years, another 30.
Another 3 years, yeah.
About the 6th year of the map.
But whatever, your choice.
What's the most
You have to-
reflective of the
So you
overall
have-
senior teacher education?
So teacher education in Berlin goes bachelor, master, 6-year, doctorate.
Okay.
Other districts, like the one I work in has multiple, and they pay a lot higher. So you have bachelor, masters plus 15, masters 2 plus 15, 6-year plus 30, then doctorate. So where I am, I'm right under the doctorate because I have 2 masters plus a 6-year plus my doctoral credit. So there's other districts paying a whole lot.
So what's the
more money.
20-year guy?
1 year, so every teacher, let me just go back one step.
Yeah.
Every teacher within 10 years has to acquire a master's.
But they have to get it in 10 years.
Yes, you have to.
That's
in order-
the state.
In order to get to state. So let's take the
So-
math.
We're starting.
Masters, you're probably looking at 20 years, 90s. 6th year, you're probably looking at 100. And that's gonna be probably similar to most districts around this.
I was curious, I don't,
No, it's fine, and I think the things that we offer are, if we take the median.
plus bennies.
Yes,
plus
we
the
take the,
benefits.
yeah, and our bennies are similar to other towns,
Yeah.
but if we take the median, the mean, which we usually do when we negotiate. I don't mean to keep, but you were all those nights with me, so we're right in the middle for Hartford County, we don't pay the top, we don't pay the bottom.
What are the
We're in
bennies worth, 15,
middle. No, a family plan and
Yeah.
medical is a little over 20.
20? I'm just curious.
No, that's, but
Number.
But you look like, I'm just saying, because that's something, look at the number at Southern, which is one of the larger teacher prep in larger UConn in the state.
Yeah.
They have less than 300 total teachers coming out in all their programs. I think it's like
Really?
250 this year, so like Waterbury superintendent, she has 121 openings right now. They're just-
Is that, I mean, there's a lot of problems.
Probably called you, right?
After COVID too, COVID probably.
Yeah, I
killed a
think,
lot of
I think a
people.
lot of things may change. People are- I think also
But we,
the work from home jobs.
No,
Because it's hard if you're a single parent and you're only getting 50,000 or 60.
Yeah.
It's tough right now to survive on that.
And
I
the
think-
cost of higher.
And I think
You
that
have to get it.
Connecticut's at 72,000 just to, you have to make 72 in a household just to
Survive.
survive.
So I think some teachers, like, I always say to me personally, I don't complain about my salary. I think I'm taking very good care of it. But I've also had many opportunities to go back to school and not have a ton of student loan debt. Where, you know, I've been able to pay for things. Not everyone's in that case. Some people have to finance their master degree with just 20,000, then you look at the interest on the loan. You know, that's a whole other issue, but But I think-
No, I'm just, I didn't know.
So
it's helpful, the state is totally revamping the certification credentials, they're about 20 years old.
Oh, really?
And they're not very robust and they're very guided, so I think there's gonna be different routes to certification, if I guess, because of the need, it's gonna be need-based. But there is the consideration of, you know, especially math and science teachers, there's nobody in the programs, schools are shutting down the program. There's really a need to where they're gonna find these teachers in the near future, so. I think this is gonna look, we're very fortunate though.
Not about
We
it.
have a great
No.
community. So it's not the pay why teachers come to Berlin. It's that the student population, you know, is wonderful. We hired teachers from other districts past year. The students, the parents, the schools itself, they're given proper environment to work in, resources. And those are the things that make people want to come to work, want to come to this.
It's a great community. It's a great.
Right. So that's,
All right.
I will say, being on that negotiating committee.
Yeah.
I encourage anybody that's like, they come and look at it, because I kind of thought it would be easy, and you actually went in thinking, oh, we have this in the bag, and it was not in the bag. We were this close. That close, like, to go in court, this close. It was like last minute kind of thing, and it's definitely eye-opening what they say, and your hands get tied at one point.
So when they retire after, what do they gotta stay, how long they have to stay to retire?
35 years
35,
as a state employee
but, you know,
for their pension, which is a state pension.
Right.
Now, if
Fully
you're
vested at
fully
the time.
fully
Right.
vested, but you have to, then they have a formula of age. But
Yeah.
if you're 35 years, regardless of your age,
what kind of, what are they getting after? What
2% a year.
2% a year?
The cap is 37 and a half years and 75. No,
No insurance, just.
no,
All the
insurance,
time.
No
no,
insurance, no
no,
health.
no social security.
Yeah, you don't have social security.
Well,
Well, don't think,
you could qualify to get a second job.
Yeah.
If they also look at it.
they cut it out, right? They reduce your social security, that's. You don't have social security, however, it's not. You do, so I was just curious.
So another thing you can do, and I do this a lot, I'll look up, if you like go into Google and write the name of the town, like teacher contract. It comes right up, it's on public records, Comcast actually publishes all of them.
You
And
saved
then,
me from having to do that, see, that's why.
I know, but if you ever get bored and you're scrolling, that's how you can access it. Very accessible.
No, so, you wanna, so, yeah, so,
Gina has something to say.
oh, yes.
It's safe to say that most of what changes is just inflation and the contractual agreements. Of course, we had COVID. So really, what else, when you go year to year, I've only been through one budget cycle, so I'm still learning. What changes? Is it the demographics? We have more students. I mean, when Sal is saying, well, come in at this much, you know, to try to keep it the same. Other than, I know these are big, inflation and contractual agreements, which obviously go up. What else really big changes from one school year to the next in terms of need? I mean, I know technology changes, but you don't really need new things every year, right? I'm just trying to
No,
understand it.
it's a great question. You take the contractual obligations of just, let's say, human capital, right? You could look at where the number is, that is the majority of the increase.
Right.
The other stuff is less than 20% of money. I want to say it's like, actually, would you know, it's like 14, maybe 15? outside of human, yeah, it's like 15% of our budget. So if you take $50 million budget, took in 15%, you're talking, you're talking 10% is 5 million, so you're talking 7.5 million in the budget is outside of people. So that's good. So what's in there? There's certain systems and things that we have to purchase annually. There's subscriptions that we have to run the district, which we couldn't do without. And typically when they go up, they're usually between 4 and 7% annually. That's usually what they do. But those are the things, whatever technology we can break the budget out. We can see that exactly what's in that 15%.
And when we refer to contractual obligations, businesses were always usually just refer to staffing and benefits. That's not a true contractual obligation to the board because we have our transportation contracts, we have our contracts for our softwares, and contracts for our medical services, all those kind of things. So when you look at that, we're at 13%. It's not a true just contract law. There's other contractual obligations, small percentage that are not just staff. So when you when you actually break it down, things that could be flexible, it's usually the last three categories, which are supplies, which has there's all equipment, which is historically that's just always been something that has happened here. It's funded with surplus funds or grant funds like. And then there's all other expenditures where the board will, invest in town projects that gets cut from the town side, like the paving of the school parking lot and redoing the sidewalks over at the elementary school. I just want to say, I think as elected officials, you guys really have to consider what do you want education to look like in this town, not only now but in the future. Days of education being just a teacher in front of a blackboard with a box of chalks and 3 textbooks no longer exists. Education has evolved. With that came more expenses. We are technology-based education. That's just the future of not just Berlin, all education. And with that, unfortunately, whether as a taxpayer, comes with an expense that we have to bear the burden of.
So, council members, let's start.
I think I can speak for my son, Mike, and my grandson, Jack here. We
You keep them in line?
they keep me in line. Over the years, it's been about the same education. And I always say, and everyone's sick of hearing it, education is expensive, ignorance is unimportant. Our safety and first responders, fire, crews, our senior and your quality of life, economic development, and a look at our capital. I think those are our 5 priorities, and I think it's the same as we've done.
I'll just add that, the kids are our future, there's no question, and we do need to fund them. I agree with you, it's not blackboard and chalk anymore, it hasn't been for a long time. I think that we just need to look at the whole picture, scale back where we can scale back, if at all possible, because it's gonna be tight for everybody next year. We are in a recession. Anybody wants to say we are. And I foresee some funding coming down from the state, okay, and in terms of education. Nothing's been ironed out yet, but I know they're talking about a lot of the social components of the mental health issues. And I know that they are working on certain things to come through. So hopefully that will help with the budget and the demands at the level of the school.
I was gonna say, I know this is my first time going through the budget process, town counselor, but honestly, since my husband and I moved to town and we've gone through that really annual budget meetings,
Exciting, very exciting.
so dorky that way. But I've always wanted to try and stay involved. And one of the first things that came up to us when we moved into town was first thing was voting, hey, how about a new high school? So we looked into different things. We don't have kids, but we understand that that's where the future is. So we always try and support education. But on my professional side as well, kind of where Sal was going, is when my CEO would come to me and say, okay, I need your budget for next year. I'd be like, okay. He's like, no. He goes, I don't care about what your wants. He goes, you look at it, you tell me what you need. He says, because I don't want to do the back and forth. I don't want to do a tactics. You go, tell me what your needs are. Let's get through the budget. Then we can look at wants down the road, and then we can maybe forecast. But I mean, I understand the contractual obligations as far as salaries, et cetera. But we went through years where there were no salary increases for staff. Just couldn't do it. It wasn't a budget. And that's a reality for some of the taxpayers. So it's trying to keep that balance. And I think I'm all for getting the kids what they need. And do I think athletics and drama club and all that are important? Yes, it is. That's part of in my opinion, a full education. So again, I think it's just really seeing what the needs are versus the wants. And I do think wants are important to forecast the future, but I think sometimes separating the two can work a little bit better when you really.
Education, probably one of the most important things our government does. And unfortunately, our society is asking schools to replace the family. They take over more and more of what the family used to be responsible for. It costs a lot of money to have someone go to the kid's house. And many other things, that I don't understand. And that's not our school system's choice to take those on. It'd be a mandate. But Peter was pointing out, we have to account for the living. Take care of our first responders, public safety. They have a safe road to drive on. School bus can't get to the school, work at the school. And a lot of them consider. Another problem I have trying to work out, what's the government going to do? Government says, oh, we're going to have more money for school than what does that actually mean for the world? We're trying to use some of the COVID money for the ventilation project. Can we redirect some? We don't know. I appreciate the early meeting, but thank you.
Charles, to your point, I think it's interesting when you bring up, and I agree, if you read through the statute, all the 40 different statutes under chapter 170, it tells you every single thing. And I spent so much time this summer really reading through it, understanding it, familiarizing myself first time in 7 years sitting on the board to really understand what the duties of the Board of Education are. And I encourage all of you to look through it and read it. It's really overwhelming. There's 40 sections and hundreds of subsections outline what the schools and the board has to do, which is passed through legislation. And so then if we don't do that, then the state can come over and reconstitute our board, and it's happened.
And cut your funding.
Well, and take out all of us and put in whoever they want, not necessarily people from town.
And
cut
I
our
get it,
funding.
it's not your board's idea to take over family.
Right.
The art society is marching in that direction. What the church and what the family used to do, now we're asking the school to do. Strange new world.
Yeah, and again, like if you read through that and you see it was really eye-opening to me to say, wow, these are our responsibilities to make sure to get addressed. And obviously a lot of it is the superintendent, and we have to make sure he's doing his job. But there's a lot there, and it's all goes through the House and Senate. But I think you bring up an excellent point.
Mr. Roach, what do you have to say? What say you this evening?
All right, so I have some comments and I guess from some questions. But some of the one with 170 that you said you read.
Chapter 170.
I see library schools publish summer reading list. I've never seen that one, and I'm really surprised you did that. Accolades to you. Kudos. This is what you do for fun.
It's pretty good.
How you do, yeah. Tracy's heard a lot from me about it. There's been a lot of eye-opening
So,
moments.
Let's talk about the budget, and this is your talk, right? I mean, just, sometimes different opinions, and it's okay. That's what makes this really go around. So, my background, all of you know, the chief financial officer at the university, private university, and we dealt with managing expenses, but you could not just pass it on to your student, the customer, right? It's driven by market forces. Now, you could make the same argument here, but you increase the mill rate, you really don't, the residents don't have a choice whether I can pay that or not. But students look at it and say, nah, it's too expensive, I'm going somewhere else. Or based on their family income, you will have to discount their tuition. It's all about affordability. You know, it is not a captured audience. So price sensitivity was very important. You know, a slight increase, a percentage here or there, and you do multiple models before you go in. So having said that, every year, just like the town, we would have so many things of, you know, called deferred maintenance that we could not address. Because you can't go and borrow as much as you want, comes back as debt service. So you would put this in the back burner, but you would have all the priorities. And we would ask, like the managers, the deans and others, here's your budget, but if you don't spend it, leave it, it'll come back in some fashion, right? And I believe we do that really well here in town. We come back with surplus here. Public works, facilities, other managers come talk about it a little bit more. They are asked to manage their budget really tightly, right? And when it comes back, it has allowed us to go back and invest in capital. Last year, especially, we had a zero capital for $300 million infrastructure, but we were able to go back and invest in. When I worked at the university, it was actually a joke about what public universities did. Because June is called in public universities Christmas, right? Because their budget is based mostly on what they spent last year. And a lot of folks went and spent tons of money. And they would just tell me, my counterparts would tell me, Coach, I gotta tell you, buying laptops and supplies and furniture, the stuff I bought last year is still in storage. But see what they do, otherwise we'll slash. Right? So that's not very strategic, right? The optics are good. Oh yeah, we need the money, so we'll fund it. But I would rather try to change the narrative of that. I know it's a tough sell, but we should not be embarrassed. Actually, it's a good thing because you're managing things really well. And we should change the narrative. Explain to the taxpayer why we have a surplus. Now, I do get it, Sal, 3-4 million is a little bit too much, and I'll talk about that. And part of the reason is you are not having at the beginning of the year, when we submit you the budget, it's 6 to 18 months before we are trying to anticipate things that are going to happen. Right? It's not an itemized list of expenses nicely lined up saying this is what we're going to spend on. We speculate, we plan the best case scenario. Same with the income receipts. It's not, everybody's not committed to paying a certain amount. Last year was a good example. We collected more, worked out well. Staffing is a big issue. PD, we had all these vacancies, right? We hire people, and then sometimes we couldn't, the market is such we couldn't get anyone in the planner's office, right? So, but position was there. Same way, right? When folks leave middle of the year, you replace them at a lower level, the lower step. So that gives you some other money in that angle as well. So I mean, I'll give you a couple of other examples that when you go through the year, things happen, whether it's, and we always have to think about whether are we going to hire public works and facilities, get something done, do we need to get a contractor? And sometimes the staff is available,
we save money because, we can get this project done, do a lot of the prep work in-house, save us enough money. But all those things you can't really plan at the beginning of the year. So there's going to be some cushion margin, but what we are doing this year is just today we had a meeting with all our departments, right? And I really appreciate the council and the board of finance, your support the last couple of years. We requested some staffing position. And mind you, I took some off too, after this, right? So I'm telling people, do not ask them to staff, right? Second one we are doing is, it's hard to do a real zero-based budget right from the beginning. We don't have enough staff, we don't have the technical expertise. But what we are doing this year, perhaps Kevin spoke to you about this, we are asking people to, any line item in the budget that's more than 25,000, right? Starting next year, maybe you'll go below that. Identify everything that you're going to do, right? And look at this year and the year before. And if you have spent less, 2 years in a row, you have a $50,000 budget, you're spending 25, guess what? We'll be taking that back. So when I ask folks to go and do this, the different contractual obligations, salary increase, I'm guarantee you it's going to be above 2%. But then the town manager's budget, I would remove certain items and I'll do my best to bring it to 2%. Now, I will also tell you when I submit the budget, here are some of the rest. I mean, right now there's some flexibility in the budget. My favorite thing, Mr. Mayor, when we did the leash free area, he said, yeah, go get that fence, put the fence around. It's 30 grand. We had it in the fencing account, so we were able to put that in there. But if you don't have the money, I'm with you. Saying you scrape everything out down to 2% and do the board of finance and you have to get the approval to get it funded. So the other one that I would throw on the table is, it's really important. We do this from year to year. It's not very short term. And I like the idea of capital, getting funded from year before. But let us try to build the capital, right? And I'm not saying do it with additional funding. If we can, as we, especially at the next couple of years, we reduce our debt service, take the reduction in debt service so that if the budget stays flat and build the capital budget, start somewhere, 500,000, 1 million. It has, I meet this town manager, what are you talking about? A $7 million capital budget. Okay. You could have easily addressed the police station if you had that point, right? So start building. And I would ask, this is obviously up to you. When we do this, we find, I'm sure they will find some for adding, like people plan on online together. If you pull that out, let's try to put that into a capital budget so that you don't lose that. And we still say that keep it at 2% and perhaps budget at fairly reasonable. So I mean, those are my high level big picture type of things that you want to think about as you do the budget plan. And again, I have told folks, do not ask for everything, but at the same time, I want to know if there's something that needs to be done that needs to be managed, if it's a high level of risk. I'll give you an example. Just yesterday, thank you, council have approved and you funded the server replacement. Servers need to be replaced every 5 years or so. And get 7 years, maybe 10 years by the time you replace it. We just got lucky. That runs the tax collection, assessor's office, all the financial records, payroll systems, everything's on that server. And so when I came in and I looked at that, and there was this thing when I asked the IT person at that time, why aren't you requesting it? Every year you don't want to put it on the list because nobody's going to fund it. That's a bad place to be. So I'm very cognizant of funding, but at the same time, I want to know you're not asking for something. At the end of the day, you're responsible for providing the services to the residents. Whether it's snow plowing or getting road work done, getting the roof, but if there's a roof that needs to get replaced, please let me know. Don't just assume. Like zero last year, I'm not going to want this. So I'm trying to strike a balance there, and hopefully by the time we get to the March meetings and all that, we'll have a very good sense of what this plan. So that's mine.
I'm not against surplus. I guess I'm looking at the level of surplus.
Yeah, I get it.
I mean, it's been consistent over a few years, not just in 1 year, that's why. So there's always gonna be some reserves in the budget, unknown requirements. So I'm not, I agree with it. So, and I think, I know it's complicated. I know that there's school requirements. I'm just throwing out some challenges here. If the risk is so high, I'm saying the 2% don't go, you know what I mean, because of the risk. We'll look at it. And so my point is that I want to continue to have ongoing dialogue through the budget process, not wait till the end to decide, you know, we have a problem here. And that's the reason why we have this meeting, to start off, kick off, and then continue that ongoing dialogue with the Board of Education in the town to see what's best for the, you know, for all of us to make sure that we maintain that quality of service, keeping in mind that our citizens, okay, are struggling. You know what I mean? And the reason why we've had 2 zero tax increases and a 1.1% is because of, you know, the economy, and it's not getting any better. So we're trying to balance, you know, budget increases with also accommodating our citizens with all the issues that they have with paying for food, health insurance, fuel, whatever it is. And so we're trying to balance it up. And I want to work as a team, you know, and we're going to have disagreements, but I want to work together to come to a place where, you know, we're all comfortable.
Can I ask a question? I know we keep saying that our citizens are struggling. I'm not pushing back. Do you have any data to quantify that? Do we have any state statistics that say in Berlin, Connecticut, how many are under the poverty, or how many have been collecting unemployment, or how many foreclosures or eviction? Is there any quantifiable data so we can like ground that in? Because I'm just curious.
All I have is that the average person's paying what, $600-700 more a month for food, fuel, and everything. I mean, it's in general. I mean, everybody's been
Everyone
impacted.
feels the pinch.
Everyone feels it, right? But
I
like,
mean, let's face it, product is up roughly 25% to 50%, and services. So somehow, somewhere that trickles down to the consumer. We as consumers are certainly feeling that. You know, in terms of statistics, I'm sure the state or the federal government has some statistics.
It's not
But,
bad, I'm
You
sorry.
know, that's okay. But you know, clearly there is an issue, you know, we're coming.
but
out of
100%.
I just don't know what the breakdown is, but what Sal is saying is, we're trying not to pass the buck on to the general populace. We need to try to do that.
Right, which I understand, and that's why I said I'm not pushing back, but I'm saying if we're gonna keep going with that, I think it's gonna just be a much more compelling point we can make by grounding it in some quantifiable data, right?
Yeah, so I was gonna say, when we did the affordable housing. We pulled some data, some data, so I try to see what we already, but in general. Well, you know. Yeah. Compared to some of the
Compared to some,
other, right?
absolutely.
So, but. Well, you know,
Generally speaking.
But I think also with the new things that have been passed on student loans, like how many people in our town are gonna have forgiveness, and then suddenly have a new surplus of money stimulating our economy, right? Like, we don't know that. I'm not arguing that people are struggling, but I think our taxes are probably going to continue to increase if money's coming down from the state. If there's all sorts of student loan forgiveness and other social programs to help people fiscally, it's going to continue to add to inflation. But at the same time, with where we stand as a town, I think it's just going to be a much more compelling point to share out to the greater public. Like, we're trying to cut X, Y, and Z because of X, Y, and Z, not just because we know people are struggling. Because I can't say, I'm not struggling, I don't know what they're talking about. Of course, they want my taxes, but at the same time, like, gas is more, but I'm spending less on other things.
but one thing we can do better and should do better now is to track the surplus. So that maybe January, February, you have a better idea of what the surplus is. Right. So that you don't find out after
thing is, going, the last few years, I came on the council, we did have huge debt, right? A very high debt payment, that's going down. Every debt we pay off, there's more money in our budget to buy books, to buy whatever we need to do, and that's, that's money that we pay to service our debt. That's going in the right direction, that's great. The other thing that was odd about all that debt was, other than the new high school, which we needed, which is great, we got it. We got it paid for, we did, because now. What we couldn't quite figure out, I couldn't figure out anyway, where all that other stuff went. All the other money went, because fire trucks, we have to buy, 7 new fire trucks, we needed a fire radio, the police radio, you name it, we needed to fix it. So, but a lot of that's been fixed now, which is great. And on the very bright side, economic development is, Berlin is, listen, I hear from other towns, I talk to other mayors, I talk to the developers in Berlin. We are booming, even in this bad economy, which is unbelievable. And I gotta say, a little bit is luck. You gotta throw that in somehow. People have discovered Berlin, which is wonderful. It's a great community. We all know it. But we worked at that too. We worked at the town hall, to make them, when new businesses come to town or expand, the town hall helps them. I mean, that's the first question that I ask if we go to a new business in town is, what happened with town hall when you had to pull your permits? What happened? Problems? No problems? No. It went well. I mean, the system is complicated, but it wasn't stopping them from opening their businesses or expanding. So that's wonderful. And the other, the large developments we have, the one by the train station, the one by the Acura dealership, Mr. Rancini's, and the other one there, the Lobster, south of the Lobster, and the new, construction, which is going to be some affordable housing by utilities. But when those are all built out, and one of the things we did too was the tax abatement policy, so we're not getting as much tax. But when they're all built out, that's going to be some more tax revenue, which hopefully will offset some of the inflationary costs and things. So if you look around us, even Newington is not economic development. I mean, they're kind of built out a lot in Newington, but they're not. Rocky Hill is, and I talked to that mayor. So, yeah, we've been very lucky. So, despite the fact but I think because we've been fiscally responsible too, it's helped us. So, the overall economy in the state and the country is not that great. Inflation is big, and hopefully we're, some economists all over the world. That's true. All over the world, and economists say some say we are in a recession. If you look at job figures and all that, yeah, but not sure. But Berlin has been very lucky. It's a great town. The school system is well respected in other towns, and I think by our people. So we're lucky. We just got to keep at it. Keep doing what we're doing. I thought last year the budget process was least contentious of anyone since I've been involved in it. That's great. Everybody worked together. We had this meeting. Now it was a little bit later, but now we're having it earlier. Talk a little bit about things and think about things to come, and you can have it, after the election too. Folks change. Get those people on board. So, but we really are much more forward thinking, planning much earlier than the old days. It would be January, February, March, maybe people are talking about the budget. So things are worked hard. I think everybody, or bad, or council and certainly easier, better at it now. From what I could see over the last few years, Roach has helped immensely, and not easy. It's not easy at all. We heard last night from the Wolfers, but it's pretty good. We really do. If we look at the other towns, pretty lucky. But we got to keep at it. We got to keep at it. We can't let up. We can't rest on our laurels. Anyway, just want to throw some positive stuff. No, it wasn't negative. No, but, well, inflation is negative.
I mean, when you talk about budget, it's not.
It's always, no, it's always negative, and everybody finds out.
I think Ashley has a comment really quick.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
I just have quick comments about
Yeah.
the surplus and how it's been trending the past few years. I think it's important to consider that these past 2 years have not been like any other year that we experienced. And both the town and the board had significant savings because of the pandemic, our operating costs. So I think we could argue that, the surplus wouldn't be as high as it has been in the past couple of years if we didn't have those COVID-like circumstances that happened that allowed us to save things to invest in 2%. So I think this year is going to be more true to a real operating year for both the town and the board of it, and the surplus will most likely, if I were to estimate right now or have to say like how do you think it's going to be, that surplus won't be. It's just.
No, now we turn negative again.
I hope you're wrong.
Sorry,
No,
sorry.
no,
I know
no.
we're actually gonna touch upon it.
It's not negative.
Well, I just,
Maybe don't ask.
we have to consider the savings we use.
Yeah,
Right.
Yes.
And I think that's a good point, that hadn't been brought up.
This has not been a negative discussion.
No, not at all.
I don't mean to say that, but I think the good thing is there are hopefully tax revenue will increase, which is important, right?
So in general, I mean, the goal is to try and. I don't want you to think that that's going to change because of the rebound, but the burden to the taxpayers to try to keep it at possible, right? Not to increase.
And, I appreciate, input from everybody tonight. I think we have to just keep the discussion ongoing, before the budget is actually published. We want to have meetings, separate meetings to discuss further, I've done it with Julia, I've done it with Brian, I've done it with Ashley. So just keep it going, and we all want the same thing, right? We want to provide a adequate budget to provide the right quality of services to our people, but we have challenges. You know what I mean? So let's work together. That's my impact. Move forward.
And the good thing, I guess, is when we go to those budget referendums as we did last year, it's sad and good at the same time, is that nobody shows up to vote, but if they're angry, they will show up, right? The angry voters that will show up. But they're, apparently relatively, I guess, happy with the budget, although then we do complaints after and he asked, did you vote on the budget? No, we didn't. So you never know what the answer is.
You should all be proud of this. My neighboring town's cold just they're still looking at the budget going back and forth. And well, you never get traffic or any questions at the budget meeting. And the problems that we have there are around, people think the problems are around dog. And more traffic.
Yeah.
These are good problems. You're not here for the exciting budget. Because
I know.
because
They were
we're doing
exciting.
things right. There were some exciting, that's
Yeah.
fine. That's what,
Huh?
maybe at a point we're doing things.
But that's right, that's my
Like,
point.
It's really good.
I think we
work together.
moved
And our
forward.
concerns.
Agree. I know, it's a good thing,
No, I know, it's a good thing.
Yeah. right? No, it's a good thing that people are
Right.
not upset. We're not at each other's throats, right? It was that way a few years ago. It's always not very pleasant.
So I say these are the biggest problems.
Yeah.
The big stuff is okay.
Not too bad.
Everybody wants the boss.
All
I missed that.
Roach, you better not have missed that. We all love the golf pro. We now.
Yeah, how'd that go last night?
It's not cool there.
Oh,
It's all good. It's all good. They all pick on it. They all like the golf pro, which is okay to do that. 50 times over. It's okay to hear. And the golf
So
course-
you know.
The golf course is in the black too, even better. That's the best part. Right, yeah, it's all good. Yeah, I think we're good. Are we good? Let's stay long, we stay till 10:30 like last night. Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Like I did.
It's a big pearl, biggie line. Why is it one thing?
No.